Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Lloyd and welcome to No Budget Reviews, the series where we go around the country finding cars that you can buy in good condition with an MOT for under £1,000 and filming them with absolutely no money at all. So we have to use my phone, no microphones, no fancy DSLRs, nothing like that. Just good honest cars that you can buy for very little money and you can enjoy driving. Well, what a surprise. No Budget Reviews returns for more Rover content, and for that I make no apologies whatsoever. It's not just Rover content this time, viewers, it's nostalgic Rover content. This is a 1995 Rover 214 SI 5-door. This is known as the R3 shape. It was originally coded when it was designed in SK3, and it's very heavily based on the R8 platform. In fact, the whole front suspension and front structure and obviously the K-series engine is carried over from a late version of one of those. The steering wheel is almost identical to the 1996 R8 216 SLI automatic that I had, apart from the steering wheel controls and the airbag light, which were on my which are different in here because this has no airbag light but has steering wheel controls. My R8 had an airbag light but no steering wheel controls. Jude, who was the previous owner of the Proton, who we would have seen in this very location in Cobham, with the walkaround we did, which has now gone to its new owner, also owns this car and other cars that you'll see on this channel. This is called Brooklands Green, and it's the colour that my 214 SI was. Mine was a bit of a later car than this. There are a few differences between this and the later ones. One of the main ones is that in 1997, Rover deleted all model names for the back of the car. So it says 214 SI on here, but mine just said 200. This was really the size of, say, a Polo or a Fiesta, but Rover decided that they'd go a bit upmarket, as they'd done with the R8. That had been a bit more expensive than an Escort or an Astra. They decided to make this car compete with the Escort and the Astra, which I'm not sure was a great idea. I mean, later on, the 25, which is essentially a heavy facelift of one of these, was more realistically priced. Being an SI at this time, we have the famous kind of Rover sort of, I don't really know what to call this upholstery. It looks like it's curtain fabric or something. But the seats, typical kind of Rover, nice material on them. We've only got manual windows in this and manual door mirrors. Mine actually had electric mirrors and electric windows, even though it was the same specification. It was just an SI. But they took off the steering wheel controls, so it was obviously a trade-off in some way. Jude's got the original Philips stereo in here. No air conditioning, that was only available on some other models. Obviously the wood and more wood. Nice clear instruments. They're not exactly the same as an R8. They are a bit different, although this dashboard did go into later R8s after 1995. So you see this on the Coupe, Cabriolet and Tourer versions after that date. I don't know why I've got no coin-to. We've got all the blanking plugs known to man. I don't know what these would have been. Probably one of them is electric mirror control, I think. So yes, this is the original Philips stereo for the car. This is a really common thing that happens on R3s and Rover 25s, is that the gear lever gator goes really horrible. This has the R65 gearbox co-developed with Peugeot. There was also an automatic version available in the 1.6 engine, and then later 25s after 2003 got the Ford IB5 gearbox. I don't remember this gearbox being particularly good in my car, but this car is low mileage. We've got a cable clutch in here, and the biting point's quite high in one of these. We'll see what that's like a little bit later. Very big door pockets on here, but not very tall, so things might fall out unless you're careful. Fabric's going a bit on my door card, but I have to tell you, viewers, this car costs £100, so I can't really criticise it too much for you know, a little bit of heritage. Just 52,709 miles. We've got electric sunroof in here. I'm not going to play with this because Jude's been having some sealing problems with this, so we won't do that. Vents, again, familiar to people who've had an R8 with a loaded dashboard in them. Let's open the glove box. Yes, again, very similar kind of size and function to one that's in an R8. Just very simple meter controls, again, straight out of an R8. I think I'm going to have a problem getting in the back, but I will do anyway. They're not known for being the most spacious cars. This is why you couldn't quite say that these would compete with an Escort or an Astra. And indeed, they do not, because I've not got a lot of room in here at all. I have to sit with my legs like this and my head against the headlining, which in finest Rover tradition is sagging. Never mind. Again, windows that are operated by hand, same little door handles that you'd find on an R8, and a little material that is slightly sagging. Nevertheless, I love this fabric. It's really nice. The seats are actually worn really, really well in this car. They look fine. A little bit of the plastic and stuff is going off. This is one of Jude's daily cars, and so I don't think he's going to be taking it to too many shows at the moment. So he has got plans to do things up because the mileage of the car is quite low. Let's have a look at the boot. One of the things that you'll notice is different to the HHR 400 and R8 is you've actually got a proper boot release, which you know, many people like on cars like this. Things like the Corsair and the Polo would have had that. So they obviously tailor this car for that particular market, which is what we like. The boot's pretty big for one of these. It's much bigger than something like the contemporary Fiesta would have been, I think. We've got quite a lot of intrusion in some way. It's not as bad as the original suspension that they were planning on having. This is actually a modified Austin Maestro rear suspension in this R3, which I believe gives the car quite good handling. We'll have to see. It's been a long time since I've driven one of these. But yes, it's a pretty capacious one. I'd say it's about 300 litres or so. And if we go boot down, you can see we've got the early type boot badge, and Rynham's of Salisbury, who have been closed a long time, but it's a dealership I remember from my youth because they weren't too far away from where I lived, and all of these cars have the high level brake light in them. Let's take a look under the bonnet. Oh yes, the good old K series, complete with a slight cam cover gasket weep here. Now this is the 103 brake horsepower version of the 1.4 K series, hence the 214 name. These cars, of course, have a reputation for blowing the head gaskets, but if that does happen to you, it's a pretty straightforward process if someone knows what they're doing to replace it. But you do have to make sure that you use a good quality head gasket set, such as the Victor Rines type one, and somebody who knows what they're doing puts it back together for you. For many years, it was recommended that these cars used a thing called a multi-layer steel gasket, which didn't actually prove to be that good in service. And if you put the right head gasket back on this car, good quality one, and someone who knows what they're doing puts it back on, but you can actually increase the power and economy. Got the R8 style coolant reservoir there, and everything's pretty accessible. There's a lot of room to work in here actually for a small car. Obviously the K series was the principal engine here, apart from the L series diesels that we don't talk about on this channel. Headlamps have gone a little bit cloudy, as a lot of cars of the year have, but there's a little rust on this actually. Mine was probably rustier than this back in 2009, so it's not too bad. Right viewers, It's time to fire up the mighty K-Series and go for a drive. Straight away, I am reminded of the fact that the steering wheel, even if you put it up quite high, it's still quite low on your knees in these cars. It always was the way. And as the noise of the K-Series and the R65 gearbox. Cable clutch in this car is not actually as bad as I remember, but the travel is still really long and the biting point is very high. And for some reason the gear lever feels very, very low down in the car. Mind you, the old Polo I had, the Mark III Polo that was a 98, same colour as this pretty much. The Mark III Polo I had as my first car also felt really low down with the gear lever, so that's nothing extraordinary. Yeah, the gearbox is a lot better than most of them, but it's still a little bit on the floppy side. The PG1 gearbox that actually came with the higher powered versions of this car, which is a Honda derived gearbox, was a bit better. Right, let's just see if we get up this junction without killing ourselves. Ooh, she likes to rev. Oh yes. Yeah, it's not the most precise gearbox. The clutch isn't as heavy as I remember from my Rover 25 that I had a few years ago. It's actually not as bad as I remember at all. The engine's still a little bit cold, so it does need to be warmed up a bit to get the best out of one of these K-Series engines. But it's not too bad. Anyway, let's talk about some other engines. So the base engine in a R3200 was initially this 103 horsepower 1.4 K-Series engine. I believe 0 to 60 time in one of these is about 11 seconds. And then later on they actually brought in two lower powered engines to the range. There was a 1.1 engine from the Rover 100, which was discontinued in late '97 due to a terrible, terrible crash test. This one, I think they tested it as a 25, was a bit better. So open the sunroof to get a bit more light in. That's better, there we go. So above the 1.1 with 60 horsepower, there was also an 8-valve K-Series. Let's just stop there a second. 8-valve K-Series with 75 horsepower. Personally, I'd say that you should go for at least this engine. It's not a lot of difference in economy and stuff between the lower powered ones and this one. And of course, being a car that's, well, before 2001, you're actually based on engine size rather than emissions, so that might well be an idea. Above the 1.4s was a 1.6 litre K-Series engine that developed 110 horsepower, which is available with an automatic gearbox. Then there was a 1.8 K-Series engine with 120 horsepower. That was in the standard 1.8 200, and then above that there was the VI version and the BRM. They had Rover's VVC version, Rover's VVC system in them, and that developed 143 horsepower. Oh yes. Oh, the steering's very nice. Forgotten how nice the steering was in one of these. Of course, there, were some diesels, but we don't talk about those on this channel, do we? Of course, my mount is in the way. That's just the way it goes, and it seems to have highlighted some kind of imperfection on the windscreen of this car, but it does have a valid MOT, so I have to point that out. So we're going to go down the A3 for a little bit. We're going to have some fun. One thing I've noticed about this car, and it's a very common problem on R8s and R3s is that the heater's not working on the top. It's only working on the top 2 fan speeds. The lower 2 don't seem to work, which is pretty annoying, but that's just the way that it goes. So we're doing 60 miles an hour now. Not the quietest engine at high speed of K series, but a lot of cars of this type in this era were very much noisy little things, and this actually is pretty refined. We've got a bit of wind whistle from the sunroof where the dude had to take the seal off because it wasn't working properly. I remember the car I had, which also had issues with the sunroof sealing, and that let some water in, and that, I realised actually after that wasn't wrong with the car, it was me not putting the sunroof properly. It's reasonably comfortable. The only thing I'm aware of, and this is a problem also on my 25, is that the accelerator pedal for me is at quite an awkward angle for my foot where I'm sitting in the car, so I'm actually starting to get a little bit of cramp in my knee already. We've not been going very long. So that's just something to bear in mind. If you buy one of these cars, perhaps the driving position won't necessarily fit you that well, and it's only going to be a problem really for people of a certain size and shape. I'm 5'11", so I'm pretty average in size. Perhaps if you're taller or shorter than me, then it won't be an issue. I'm driving in Jude's driving position here. He's a little bit taller than me, so maybe I should fiddle around with it a bit. But yeah, the seat feels very comfortable. I don't think we get adjustable lumbar support on this trim level. Trim levels available from launch were I, SI, SLI, GSI, and then the VI came a little bit later. Personally, I would prefer a GSI because you get electric things and possibility of leather seats, but that's maybe just me. Some people like these, more base trim levels. Obviously, this car has a beige interior and it's a dark green colour, which floats my boat, I can tell you. It's very nice. Right, let's go around this roundabout and see how the handling is. I can see why in later years this car was sort of revived as the MG-ZR. They made some changes for the suspension, but the engines were pretty much the same, and the platform that they'd put underneath was still pretty good, even by the mid-2000s. Yeah, it's a fun little car to drive, this. Especially for £100. Let's go through here. Oh, yes, viewers. It feels like a little hot hatch, even if it's only got 103 horsepower. Obviously on the Fiesta, that was available at the same time as the 25, and even the Fiesta before that, the sort of Mark 4 and 5 that were around during the R3's production life, they really didn't have as good engines as this at all. The old Kent engine was still around. The 1.25 only produced 75 horsepower. The 1.6 had 100 horsepower or something. They've got a much bigger engine in this, so actually the K series is pretty good. Right, let's go back to where we were, and we're going to look at some Rover 200 trim levels in a bit more depth, because there were more that first came at launch. So let's look at some of these extra Rover 200 R3 trim levels. So after about 1998, they changed this trim structure quite significantly, and that was about the time as well that the BRN Special Edition was launched, which is always in green with the little sort of air intake in the front bumper as orange, and then a nice red leather interior. But the more standard ones were IE, IL, IS, S, SE, and SEI. Now, the IE would be a very basic car, and then the SEI would be at the top. The 200s, of course, as I mentioned before, they had the R65 Peugeot co-developed gearbox on the 1.4, 1.6 engines. There was an optional automatic, which I believe was a CVT unit on the 1.6, and then on the 1.8 as well, you had the PG1 co-developed Honda gearbox. Diesels I don't remember, but of course that's irrelevant. So viewers, should you consider an R3 Rover 200? Well, if you get used to this driving position and the stretch of the stereo right down there, which is a common trait with the Rover R8 as well, then it might be a good one for you. If you know your head gasket's been done, you know the cam belt's been changed properly, then yes, this is actually a very nice car to drive. Not so keen on this cable clutch myself. I'll see what the 45 that Jude has is like as well, because this has the same engine and gearbox in it, but it's got a hydraulic clutch, so that might be a bit better. The size of the car is really good, visibility is excellent, and it's a lot of fun. These cars are not a lot of money on the second-hand market, but obviously choose carefully, and you should have a lot of fun. It's a great, I'd say, an entry-level experience into Rover ownership that a lot of people I think will enjoy. So thank you very much indeed once again for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to like this video and to leave a comment below. I've got a Facebook page, facebook.com/Lloyd Vehicle Consulting, and I also have an Instagram account too, instagram.com/Lloyd_Vehicle_Consulting. Thank you.